The water surged like a living thing, black and furious, swallowing everything in its path. Fire Lieutenant Marcus Chen stood waist-deep in the churning flood, his flashlight beam cutting through the rain-streaked darkness. The beam caught something. A sedan tilted at a violent angle, half submerged against a telephone pole. Water poured through the shattered driver's window. "We need to move now," his partner shouted over the roar of the current. But Marcus wasn't alone. At his side, chest deep in the freezing water, was Ranger, a German shepherd with scars along his muzzle and eyes that had seen too much. The dog's ears were pinned back, his body rigid with focus. Marcus felt the leash go taut in his hand. Then Ranger did something that made Marcus's blood run cold. The dog pulled away from the car they were approaching and turned back toward the vehicle they'd just passed. A submerged SUV 20 yards upstream, its roof barely visible above the waterline. "Ranger, no, here, boy!" But the dog lunged, breaking free from Marcus's grip. His powerful legs churned through the water, swimming against the current with desperate determination. Marcus's heart hammered. They had protocols. They had priorities. The sedan in front of them had visible victims. So why was his rescue dog, trained, disciplined, reliable, swimming back toward an empty vehicle? What Ranger pulled from that car would shatter everything Marcus thought he knew about duty, instinct, and the line between the living and the gone. 3 days earlier, the sky over Millbrook County had been deceptively clear. Marcus remembered the morning precisely. The way sunlight had filtered through the station's kitchen windows, the smell of burned coffee, the sound of Ranger's nails clicking against the linoleum floor as the dog followed him from room to room. Millbrook Fire Station 7 sat on the eastern edge of the county, a converted brick building with a small kennel attached to the rear apparatus bay. It wasn't much, but it was home. Marcus had been stationed there for 6 years. Ranger had been with him for 2. The dog was a rescue in every sense of the word. Marcus had found him at a municipal shelter slated for closure, crammed in a concrete run with a dozen other forgotten animals. Ranger had been scheduled for euthanasia, too old, too scarred, too reactive for adoption. The intake paperwork said he'd been surrendered by a family who'd moved and couldn't take him. No history, no background, just a dog with sad eyes and a body that flinched at sudden movements. Marcus had taken him on a whim, a gut feeling, the kind firefighters learn to trust. It took months to earn Ranger's trust, months of patient training, slow movements, soft voices. Marcus discovered the dog had been trained before, commands embedded deep in his muscle memory. Sit, stay, search, retrieve. Someone had worked with this animal. Someone had loved him once. Now, Ranger was certified for search and rescue operations. He could locate victims trapped under rubble, detect accelerants at arson scenes, and track lost hikers through dense wilderness. But more than that, he had an instinct Marcus couldn't explain, a sense for danger, for wrongness, that went beyond training. The morning of the 3rd day before the flood, Marcus sat on the station's back steps with a mug of coffee, watching Ranger patrol the chain-link perimeter of the small yard. The dog moved with precision, nose to the ground, pausing occasionally to lift his head and scan the horizon. "He always this intense?" asked Jamie Ortiz, the rookie paramedic who'd transferred in last month. Marcus smiled. "Always. It's like he's waiting for something." "Waiting for what?" Marcus shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything." Jamie laughed, but Marcus wasn't joking. There was something in Ranger's eyes, something that looked like memory, like purpose unfulfilled. It unsettled him sometimes, the way the dog would stare at him late at night, as if trying to communicate something vital, something just beyond reach. The weather forecast that afternoon called for rain, heavy rain. Flash flood warnings had been issued for low-lying areas near Clearwater Creek, which ran through the heart of Millbrook's oldest neighborhoods. The creek had flooded before, minor property damage, a few evacuations, but nothing catastrophic. Nothing that required full station mobilization. Marcus wasn't worried. He should have been. By nightfall, the rain came. Not in sheets, but in walls. Vertical torrents that hammered the station roof like artillery fire. The power flickered twice before dying completely. Emergency generators kicked in, bathing the apparatus bay in harsh fluorescent light. The radio crackled. Dispatch's voice was tight, clipped. "Station 7, be advised. Clearwater Creek has breached its banks. Multiple water rescues in progress. All units respond." Marcus was moving before the transmission ended. Ranger was already at the bay door, his body coiled, ready. They loaded into the heavy rescue truck, Marcus, Jamie, Captain Linda Reyes, and 2 other firefighters. Ranger rode in the rear compartment, his harness clipped to a safety rail, his dark eyes fixed on Marcus through the partition. The drive took 12 minutes. It should have taken 4. The streets were rivers. Water poured over curbs, swallowing mailboxes, lapping at porch steps. Debris churned in the current. Tree branches, trash cans, children's toys spinning like driftwood. Marcus saw a basketball hoop floating past, still attached to its concrete base. "Jesus," Jamie whispered. Captain Reyes keyed the radio. "Dispatch, Station 7 on scene. Water levels higher than reported. We're going to need additional units." "Copy that, Station 7. Fire Rescue 3 en route. ETA 12 minutes. 12 minutes. In a flood. That was a lifetime. They parked on high ground near the entrance to Oakwood Estates, a neighborhood of modest single-family homes built in the 1970s. The development sat in a natural basin, with Clearwater Creek forming its southern boundary. The creek was gone now, transformed into a sprawling, angry lake that had consumed streets, yards, and first floors. Marcus stepped out of the truck. The water was already ankle-deep where they stood. The rain was deafening. He could hear shouting in the distance, voices calling for help, sharp and desperate. He opened the rear compartment. Ranger leaped down, landing in the water with a splash. The dog shook once, then pressed against Marcus's leg, waiting for the command. "Search," Marcus said quietly. Ranger's ears pricked forward, his nose lifted, testing the air. Then he moved, wading into the deeper water with Marcus close behind. The neighborhood was unrecognizable. Street signs disappeared beneath the surface. Cars floated like bath toys, bumping against trees and fence posts. The water was opaque, brown and churning, hiding everything beneath. Marcus knew there could be anything under there: open manholes, downed power lines, submerged debris sharp enough to slice through waders. Ranger moved with confidence, his instincts guiding him through the chaos. Marcus had learned to trust the dog's judgment completely. When Ranger hesitated, Marcus stopped. When Ranger changed direction, Marcus followed without question. They worked as one organism, moving through the flooded streets with practiced synchronization. It was a partnership forged through hundreds of training hours and dozens of real-world rescues. Marcus knew Ranger's body language better than he knew his own, could read tension in the set of the dog's shoulders, determination in the forward tilt of his ears, exhaustion in the slight drag of his paws. The bond between them went deeper than training. It was trust, pure and absolute. Marcus would follow this dog into fire, into flood, into any hell that demanded they enter, and Ranger in turn would never lead him astray. At least, that's what Marcus believed, until tonight when Ranger would do something that defied every protocol, every procedure, every rational explanation Marcus could imagine. The first rescue was textbook. An elderly couple trapped on their second-floor balcony, water climbing the stairs behind them. Marcus and Jamie reached them via inflatable rescue boat, loaded them carefully, and ferried them back to the truck. The couple clutched each other, soaked and shivering but alive. Ranger stayed in the water, circling, searching. His behavior was off, restless, agitated. He kept swimming toward the submerged southern end of the street, where the water was deepest and the current strongest. "Ranger, heel!" Marcus called. The dog ignored him. That wasn't like Ranger. He was obedient to a fault, disciplined even under stress. But now he paddled away from the team, his attention fixed on something Marcus couldn't see. "He's got something," Captain Reyes said, watching through binoculars. "Southwest corner, near the old Brennan house." Marcus followed Ranger's trajectory. The Brennan house was a 2-story colonial, painted yellow, with a wide front porch now completely underwater. The second-floor windows were dark. "Dispatch said that house was empty," Jamie said, checking her notes. "Owner died last year. Property's been in estate limbo." "Then why is Ranger losing his mind?" Marcus muttered. The dog had reached the porch. He circled twice, then began barking, sharp, urgent, the sound cutting through the rain. It was his alert bark, the one reserved for live finds. Marcus waded deeper, the water rising to his chest. The current tugged at his legs, trying to pull him downstream. He called Ranger again. This time the dog came, swimming back to him, but his eyes kept darting toward the house. "There's someone in there," Marcus said. "Dispatch said empty," Jamie repeated. Dispatch was wrong. They approached the house slowly, carefully. The front door was submerged, so they climbed onto the porch railing and forced entry through a second-floor window. Inside, the air was thick and stale, smelling of mildew and rot. Water dripped through the ceiling, Marcus swept his flashlight across the room. It was a bedroom, furniture draped with dusty sheets, cobwebs in the corners. Empty. Ranger pushed past him, sniffing frantically, moving toward the hallway. Marcus followed. The dog led him to a closed door at the end of the hall, a bathroom. Ranger pawed at the base of the door, whining. Marcus tried the handle. Locked. "Fire department, is anyone in there?" Silence. He forced the door. It splintered inward and the smell hit him. Sharp, chemical. Wrong. The bathroom was empty. No one inside. Just a cracked mirror, a rusted sink, and a small window overlooking the backyard. Ranger barked again, his nose pressed to the floor near the bathtub. Marcus knelt beside him. There, barely visible in the beam of his flashlight, were scratches in the linoleum. Deep gouges like something or someone had clawed at the floor, and beneath the scratches a faint outline, a hatch, a crawl space. Marcus's pulse quickened. He pried up the hatch. Below was darkness and the sound of water sloshing. He aimed his flashlight down. The crawl space was flooded, black water filling it nearly to the top. Floating on the surface were plastic containers, sealed tight, dozens of them bobbing like buoys. Marcus reached down and grabbed one. Inside was a fine white powder. Not flour, not baking soda. His stomach dropped. "Captain," he said quietly into his radio, "we've got a problem." Ranger growled, low and continuous. The dog backed away from the hatch, his hackles raised. Something was wrong, something beyond the drugs, beyond the house. Then Marcus heard it, a faint sound, barely audible over the storm. A voice, distant, calling for help. It wasn't coming from the crawl space. It was coming from outside, from the water. Marcus rushed to the window. Below, barely visible in the rain-blurred darkness, was a car, a dark-colored SUV submerged up to its roof, pinned against a tree in the middle of the flooded street. The vehicle hadn't been there when they'd arrived. The current must have carried it downstream, and Ranger had known. Somehow the dog had known. Marcus examined the scene more carefully through the rain. The SUV was newer, maybe 3 or 4 years old, with tinted windows that made it impossible to see inside from this distance. The water level had risen so high that only the top 6 inches of the vehicle remained above the surface. As Marcus watched, the current pushed harder against it, causing the SUV to shift slightly against the tree trunk holding it in place. Time was critical. If that tree gave way, the vehicle would be swept downstream into deeper water, and anyone inside would be lost. "We need to move," Marcus said, already heading for the window. "Now!" Jamie appeared behind him, breathing hard from climbing the stairs. "What have you got?" "Vehicle in the water. Possible occupants." Ranger alerted on it. But dispatch said, "I don't care what dispatch said." Marcus was already climbing out onto the porch roof. "There's someone in that car." He could feel it. Not just because of Ranger's behavior, but because of something deeper, an intuition honed by years of emergency response. The way the vehicle sat in the water, the way it had positioned itself against the tree, the timing of its arrival, carried by the current just as they were clearing the house. Some firefighters believed in coincidence. Marcus believed in paying attention. Marcus radioed Captain Reyes, his voice tight. "Captain, we've got a vehicle in the water. Southwest of the Brennan house, possible occupants. Copy, we're coming to you." Marcus didn't wait. He climbed out the window onto the porch roof, Ranger at his side. The rain pounded his helmet, the noise deafening. He could see the SUV clearly now, driver's side submerged. Passenger side tilted up at a steep angle. The rear window was shattered, water pouring in. He jumped into the water, gasping at the cold. Ranger leaped after him, paddling hard. Together they swam toward the vehicle, fighting the current that wanted to drag them downstream. Marcus reached the SUV first. He grabbed the door handle, but the pressure of the water held it shut. He slammed his flashlight against the window, shouting, trying to see inside. A face appeared, pressed against the glass, pale and terrified. A woman, late 30s, dark hair plastered to her skull. Her mouth moved, forming words Marcus couldn't hear. Behind her, in the back seat, a smaller shape. "Our child." Marcus's training kicked in. He signaled to the woman, "Stay calm, cover your face." He pulled his rescue knife and shattered the window with the pommel. Glass exploded inward. Water rushed into the vehicle with brutal force. The woman screamed, thrashing as the car began to fill. Marcus grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the window. She fought him, panicked, trying to reach behind her into the back seat. "My daughter," she choked. "My daughter! I've got her!" Marcus shouted. "Get out now!" He pulled the woman free, shoving her toward Jamie, who'd arrived with the rescue boat. Then Marcus dove under, into the submerged rear of the vehicle. The water was black, murky. His flashlight beam was useless. He groped blindly, his lungs already burning. His hand found something, small, soft, a child's arm. He grabbed, pulled, but she was stuck. Her seatbelt, still fastened. His knife. Where was his knife? He dropped it when he pulled the mother out. Panic flared in his chest. His lungs screamed. He tugged harder, trying to break the belt, but it wouldn't give. The girl's body was limp, unresponsive. Then something brushed past him in the water. Ranger. The dog had dove in. Impossible. Dogs didn't dive like this, didn't swim underwater with purpose. But Ranger did. Marcus felt the dog's body press against his, felt jaws close gently around the girl's arm. Together, they pulled. The seatbelt gave, and the girl came free. Marcus kicked upward, breaking the surface with a gasp. He hauled the child onto the side of the SUV, her body small and terrifyingly still. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. Her lips were blue. Jamie was there instantly, taking the girl, beginning CPR on the rescue boat. Marcus pulled himself up, coughing, his vision blurred. Ranger surfaced beside him, panting hard. "She's not breathing," Jamie shouted. Marcus climbed into the boat, taking over compressions. "Come on, sweetheart, come on. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. 30 compressions, 2 breaths." The girl's mother sobbed, clutching the side of the boat. "Please, please." Ranger stood at the bow, water streaming from his fur, his eyes fixed on the child. 30 compressions, 2 breaths. The girl coughed. Water spilled from her mouth. Her eyes fluttered open, wide and confused. She began to cry, a thin, weak sound that was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever heard. Jamie wrapped her in thermal blankets. The mother collapsed over her, weeping, holding her daughter like she might vanish. Marcus sat back, his hands shaking. He looked at Ranger. The dog was still staring at the water, his body tense. "It's okay, boy," Marcus said softly. "She's okay, we got her." But Ranger didn't relax. He kept staring at the submerged SUV, growling low in his throat. Marcus followed his gaze. The vehicle was sinking deeper, the current pulling it off the tree. Soon it would be completely submerged, swept downstream. "Ranger, what?" The dog barked once, then dove back into the water. "Ranger, no." But the dog was gone, swimming hard toward the sinking SUV. Marcus watched, helpless, as Ranger disappeared beneath the surface. 5 seconds, 10, 20. "Marcus, we need to move," Captain Reyes called from shore. "The current's getting stronger." Marcus ignored her. "Ranger, here, boy." 30 seconds, 40. Marcus's heart was in his throat. Dogs could hold their breath for maybe 30 seconds, 45 at most. They weren't built for underwater work. Ranger was pushing every biological limit. 50 seconds. Marcus prepared to dive back in. He couldn't lose this dog, not after everything they'd been through together. Not after. Ranger surfaced, something clamped in his jaws. He swam back to the boat, his movements labored, struggling against the weight. Marcus leaned over, grabbing what the dog carried. It was a backpack, small, bright pink, covered in cartoon unicorns, soaked and heavy. "Why would he?" Jamie started. Marcus unzipped the bag. Inside were clothes, a stuffed animal, a sippy cup, and at the bottom, wrapped in plastic, a manila folder. He opened it. Inside were documents, birth certificates, medical records, court orders. Marcus scanned them quickly, his flashlight beam flickering across the pages. His breath caught. The woman in the boat wasn't the girl's mother. She was a stranger. The documents told a different story. A story of custody battles, restraining orders, supervised visitation. A story of a child taken in the night. An amber alert that hadn't been issued yet because no one knew she was gone. The biological mother's name was listed, Sarah Brennan. The address, 2847 Riverside Drive, Millbrook. The Brennan house. The abandoned house they'd just searched. This wasn't a rescue. It was an abduction. And Ranger, somehow impossibly, had known to retrieve the evidence. Marcus looked at the woman. Her face had changed. The desperation was gone, replaced by something cold, calculating. "Ma'am," Marcus said carefully, "I need you to stay seated." She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at him with eyes that had turned flat and empty. Ranger climbed into the boat, positioning himself between the woman and the child, his lips pulled back, showing teeth. A warning. "Jamie," Marcus said quietly. "Radio for police backup. Now." The woman's jaw clenched. Her hands tightened on the edge of the boat. Marcus could see her mind working, calculating odds, weighing options. "Don't," Marcus said firmly. "Whatever you're thinking, don't." For a long moment, nobody moved. The rain hammered down. The water churned around them. The child whimpered softly in her thermal blanket, too young to understand what was happening. Then the woman's shoulders sagged. The fight went out of her. She looked at the little girl, not with love, but with something desperate and broken. "She was supposed to be mine," the woman whispered. "The court gave her to Sarah, but I'm her aunt. I raised her for 2 years while she was getting treatment. And then Sarah came back and just took her like I meant nothing." Marcus said nothing. There was nothing to say. He'd heard variations of this story before. People who loved children, who cared for them, who convinced themselves that their love justified anything, even kidnapping. "I just wanted to keep her safe," the woman continued, her voice breaking. "Sarah's house. It's in the flood zone. I knew it would flood. I was trying to get Lily somewhere safe, and then the water came so fast and the car got stuck and you almost killed her," Marcus said quietly. "So you almost killed the child you claimed to love." The woman's face crumpled. She began to sob, deep, wrenching sounds that held years of pain and loss and desperation. The child, Lily, watched her with wide, confused eyes. "Aunt Rachel? Why are you crying?" Rachel couldn't answer. She just kept crying, her body shaking with the force of her grief. Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Marcus held the backpack tightly, the evidence that would end this woman's freedom and hopefully ensure this child's safety. He looked at Ranger. The dog had settled now, his job complete. He sat calmly beside Lily, allowing the little girl to clutch his wet fur with one small hand. "How did you know?" Marcus whispered to the dog. "How did you know to go back for the bag?" Ranger's dark eyes met his. In them, Marcus saw intelligence, purpose, and something he couldn't quite name. Something that looked almost like memory. Not Ranger's memory, but someone else's. Someone who'd taught this dog to search not just for people, but for truth. The woman lunged. She moved faster than Marcus expected, her hands reaching for the child. Jamie shouted, trying to grab her, but the boat rocked violently, throwing them all off balance. Lily screamed. Ranger didn't hesitate. He launched himself at the woman, his jaws closing on her forearm, not biting, but holding, controlling. The woman fell back, crying out, and Marcus pinned her shoulders to the boat's floor. "Stop, stop moving," he commanded. She thrashed beneath him, her face twisted with rage and desperation. "She's mine. She was supposed to be mine. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Marcus said, his voice like iron. He pulled zip-tie restraints from his belt, securing her wrists behind her back. Lily was sobbing, curled into a ball at Jamie's feet. Jamie wrapped her arms around the child, shielding her, whispering reassurances that everything would be okay, that she was safe now. Captain Reyes arrived in a second rescue boat with 2 officers from the county sheriff's department. They transferred Rachel into their custody, her screams fading as they carried her toward higher ground. Marcus held the pink backpack, his mind reeling. He looked at Ranger, who sat calmly now, watching Lily with soft, protective eyes. "How did you know?" Marcus whispered to the dog. "How did you know to go back for this?" Ranger tilted his head, his expression almost human, almost understanding. Jamie knelt beside him, examining the documents more closely. "Marcus, look at this." She pointed to one of the court orders. "The girl's name is Lily Brennan. Lily, and her mother's address. The Brennan house," Marcus finished. "The abandoned house we searched. Rachel was taking her back there, to hide." The pieces fell into place. The abandoned house. The drugs in the crawl space, likely belonging to someone Rachel knew, someone she thought could help her disappear with the child. The flood had interrupted her plan. She'd been fleeing when the water swept her vehicle downstream, and Ranger had known. Not through training, not through scent discrimination, but through something deeper, an instinct that went beyond human understanding. Marcus radioed dispatch with an update, his voice steady despite the adrenaline still flooding his system. Within 20 minutes, Lily's real mother arrived, a frantic woman in her early 30s named Sarah Brennan, escorted by police, her face streaked with tears. "Lily! Lily!" The girl's head lifted. "Mama?" They reunited on the boat, Sarah collapsing around her daughter, both of them sobbing. Marcus stepped back, giving them space. Jamie wiped her own eyes. Sarah looked up at Marcus, her face radiant with relief and gratitude. Thank you so much. I came home from work and she was gone. Rachel left a note saying she'd taken her somewhere safe, but I knew something was wrong. When I heard about the flood," her voice broke. She pulled Lily tighter. "We need to get them to the hospital," Jamie said gently. "The girl needs to be checked out." Marcus nodded. As they prepared to transport mother and daughter to shore, Lily turned in Sarah's arms. Her small hand reached out toward Ranger. "Doggy saved me," she whispered. Ranger moved closer, allowing the child to touch his scarred muzzle. His tail wagged once, a slow, gentle sweep. "Yes, he did," Sarah said, her voice breaking. She looked at Marcus. "I don't know how to thank you. Both of you." Marcus couldn't speak. He just nodded, his throat tight. But the night wasn't over. As they ferried the family to safety, Captain Reyes's radio crackled with new urgency. "All units be advised. We've got a confirmed structural collapse at 2847 Riverside Drive. Multiple people trapped. Water rescue and technical rescue needed immediately." Marcus's stomach dropped. 2847 Riverside Drive. That was Sarah Brennan's address, the house Rachel had been trying to reach. "Station 7 responding," Captain Reyes said into the radio. She looked at Marcus. "You good to keep going?" Marcus was exhausted. His muscles ached. His uniform was soaked through, the cold seeping into his bones. Ranger was shivering beside him, his fur matted and heavy with water. But there were people trapped, people who needed help. "We're good," Marcus said. The address wasn't the Brennan house. Dispatch had made an error in the chaos. It was the Pine Grove Apartments, a 3-story brick building 2 blocks away that housed 30 families. The Pine Grove Apartments were a nightmare. The first floor had collapsed inward, the brick facade crumbling under the weight of water and structural failure. The building leaned at a sickening angle, groaning with each gust of wind. Water surged around the foundation, carrying debris, furniture, appliances, personal belongings spinning in the current. Fire Rescue 3 had arrived first, along with 2 engine companies and an ambulance. Floodlights had been set up, casting harsh shadows across the scene. Firefighters in water rescue gear moved through the chaos, calling out, searching for survivors. Marcus and Ranger joined the search perimeter. The dog was immediately alert, his exhaustion forgotten. His nose worked the air, his body vibrating with focus. "Ranger, search!" The dog moved along the edge of the building, sniffing, listening. Marcus followed, his boots squelching in the mud. Around them, other teams worked to stabilize the structure, setting up rope systems and shore supports. Ranger stopped suddenly, his ears pricked forward. He pawed at the ground near a partially collapsed window well. Then he began to dig, his claws scraping through mud and debris. "Captain, we've got something here," Marcus called. 3 firefighters joined him. They cleared away rubble carefully, revealing a small void space beneath the collapsed wall. Inside, Marcus could see movement, a flash of clothing, a pale hand. "Fire department, can you hear me?" A voice weak and thready. "Help, please. We're coming. Stay still." It took 20 minutes to extricate the victim, a teenage boy, maybe 16, trapped in the crawl space beneath his apartment. He'd been trying to rescue his cat when the building collapsed. The cat was gone, but the boy was alive, conscious, his leg broken, but no life-threatening injuries. Paramedics loaded him onto a stretcher. As they carried him away, the boy reached out, grabbing Marcus's sleeve. "My sister," he gasped. "My little sister. She was in the apartment, 3rd floor, apartment 3C. Marcus's blood ran cold. "What's her name?" "Emma. Emma Rodriguez. She's only 4. Please, my parents are out of town. It's just us. Please find her." The 3rd floor. The building was barely standing. The stairwell had collapsed. There was no safe way up. Marcus looked at Captain Reyes. She was already shaking her head. "Marcus, that structure is unstable. We can't send anyone in there. We need to wait for structural engineers to assess." "Captain, there's a 4-year-old girl." "I know, but I can't risk my people. We need to—" A crack echoed across the night, sharp and final like a gunshot. The building shifted, tilting further. Someone screamed. Firefighters scattered, moving back from the collapse zone. "Everyone out!" Captain Reyes shouted. "Clear the building now." But Marcus wasn't listening. He was watching Ranger. The dog was staring up at the 3rd floor, his body coiled, ready. Then, without warning, Ranger bolted. "Ranger, no!" The dog ran straight toward the building, leaping through a broken window into the darkness inside. Marcus heard his paws scrambling on debris, heard a single bark echoing through the ruins. Marcus didn't think. He ran after him. "Chen, stand down!" Captain Reyes yelled. Marcus ignored her. He climbed through the same window, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Inside the apartment was a maze of collapsed walls and tilted floors. Water dripped from above. Every surface groaned and creaked. The air smelled of dust and mold and something darker, natural gas leaking from broken pipes. "Ranger," he called. A bark, distant, from somewhere above. Marcus found the remnants of a staircase, half collapsed, but climbable. He ascended carefully, testing each step before committing his weight. Behind him he heard other footsteps. Jamie had followed him in. So had 2 other firefighters from Rescue 3. "You're all insane," Jamie muttered, but she kept climbing. They reached the 3rd floor. The hallway was barely recognizable, doors blown off their hinges, walls caved in. Water damage had weakened everything. The floor felt spongy beneath Marcus's boots, ready to give way at any moment. Ranger stood at the far end, pawing frantically at a closed door marked 3C. Marcus reached him, tried the handle. Locked. He kicked it once, twice. The door splintered. Inside was a child's bedroom. Pink walls, stuffed animals scattered across the floor, a small bed buried under fallen ceiling tiles. And in the corner, curled beneath a collapsed bookshelf, was a little girl, Emma. She was conscious, whimpering softly, too scared to cry. The bookshelf had fallen over her like a tent, protecting her from most of the debris, but she was trapped, her small body wedged beneath the weight. "Hey, sweetheart," Marcus said softly, kneeling beside her. "My name's Marcus. This is Ranger. We're here to help you, okay?" Emma's eyes were huge, terrified, but when she saw Ranger, something shifted. The dog crawled forward on his belly, whining gently, his tail wagging. He licked her hand. Emma's fingers closed around Ranger's fur. "Doggy," she whispered. "That's right, good doggy. He's going to stay right here while we get you out." The firefighters worked quickly, lifting the bookshelf carefully, checking Emma for injuries. Miraculously, she was unhurt, bruised, scratched, but whole. Marcus lifted her gently, cradling her against his chest. "I've got you. You're safe now." The building groaned, a deep, ominous sound that vibrated through the floor. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere below, something crashed, a wall giving way, or maybe the entire 1st floor finally surrendering to gravity. "We need to move," Jamie shouted. "Now!" They ran. Marcus held Emma tight, Ranger at his heels, the other firefighters close behind. The staircase was collapsing as they descended, steps crumbling beneath their boots. Marcus felt the structure sway, felt the moment the building began to give way entirely. They burst through the window, tumbling onto the muddy ground outside, just as the 3rd floor collapsed inward with a deafening roar. Brick and timber crashed down, sending up a plume of dust and debris that blocked out the floodlights. Marcus rolled onto his back, gasping, still holding Emma. She was crying now, sobbing into his chest. Jamie staggered over, checking them both for injuries. The other firefighters emerged from the dust cloud, coughing, but alive. "You're insane," Jamie said again. But she was smiling, tears streaming down her face. Completely insane. Captain Reyes appeared, her expression caught between fury and relief. "Chen, you ever pull a stunt like that again?" "I know, Captain. And I'm recommending you for a commendation, both of you." She glanced at Ranger, who stood panting beside Marcus, covered in dust, but alert. "Make that all 3 of you." Marcus blinked. "What?" "You heard me." She knelt beside Emma, her voice softening. "Hey there, sweetie, let's get you to your brother, okay?" They carried Emma to the ambulance, where her brother waited, his broken leg splintered. The moment he saw her, he began to sob, reaching for her with trembling hands. The paramedics placed her beside him carefully, and the 2 children clung to each other, alive, together. Marcus stepped back, letting them have their moment. He felt a weight against his leg and looked down. Ranger sat pressed against him, his body trembling with exhaustion. Marcus sank to his knees in the mud, wrapping his arms around the dog. "You crazy, wonderful animal," he whispered. "How do you always know?" Ranger's tail thumped weakly against the ground. His dark eyes met Marcus's, and in them was something ancient and knowing, a wisdom that transcended species, that spoke of duty and love and the unbreakable bond between those who serve together. "Good boy," Marcus said, his voice breaking. "Such a good boy." Around them, the chaos of the rescue operation continued. But in that moment, kneeling in the mud with his dog, Marcus felt something shift inside him. A recognition, a truth he'd been dancing around since the moment he'd found Ranger in that shelter. This wasn't just a dog. This was a partner, a guardian, a connection to something larger than himself. And whatever had happened in Ranger's past, whatever training, whatever love, whatever loss had shaped him, had prepared him for this. For nights like this. For impossible rescues and split-second decisions, and the kind of courage that looks like instinct, but is really something closer to grace. Marcus held him tighter, feeling the dog's heartbeat against his chest, strong and steady. "Thank you," he whispered, "for everything." The flood lasted 3 more days. In that time, Marcus and Ranger worked 18-hour shifts, moving through the devastated neighborhoods of Millbrook County, searching, rescuing, saving. By the time the waters receded, they had pulled 11 people from submerged vehicles, located 4 trapped in collapsed structures, and recovered 2 bodies from the swollen creek, bringing closure to families who'd been waiting in agony. Rachel Martinez, Lily's aunt, was charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, reckless endangerment, and interference with custody. The drugs found in the Brennan house's crawl space belonged to her boyfriend, who was arrested separately. Rachel's attorney argued diminished capacity due to mental health issues, but the prosecutor pushed for significant prison time. The case would take months to resolve. Lily was reunited permanently with her mother, Sarah. They moved temporarily to Sarah's sister's house in the next county, while their home was repaired. Sarah sent Marcus a card every week for a month, each one filled with updates on Lily's recovery and expressions of gratitude. In one card, she included a photo. Lily smiling, holding a stuffed German shepherd that looked remarkably like Ranger. Emma Rodriguez and her brother, Carlos, were placed temporarily with their grandmother, while their parents returned from an anniversary trip that had been interrupted by the flood. The family's apartment was destroyed, but a community fundraiser raised enough money to help them relocate. Emma's mother brought the little girl to the fire station 3 weeks after the rescue, carrying a homemade cake and a drawing Emma had made. The drawing showed a firefighter and a dog pulling a little girl from a colorful building. At the bottom, in careful child's handwriting, someone had written, "Thank you for saving me." Marcus pinned it to the bulletin board in the station kitchen, right next to Lily's drawing. 2 children, 2 impossible rescues, 1 extraordinary dog. 3 weeks after the flood, Marcus received a call from the county administrator's office. Ranger was being awarded the Medal of Valor, the highest honor a service animal could receive in Millbrook County. The ceremony would be held at the county courthouse, with local media in attendance. Marcus didn't care about medals or ceremonies or publicity, but he understood the value of recognition, especially for a dog who'd spent years forgotten in a shelter, scheduled for euthanasia, dismissed as too old and too damaged to matter. So he showed up, Ranger at his side, both of them in dress uniforms. The dog sat perfectly still as the administrator draped a ribbon around his neck, the medal gleaming against his dark fur. The crowd applauded. Cameras flashed. Emma and Lily were both there, sitting in the front row with their families, waving at Ranger. The dog's tail wagged slowly, his eyes scanning the crowd with that characteristic alertness that never quite turned off. After the ceremony, as people lined up to pet Ranger and take photos, an elderly woman approached Marcus. She was probably in her 70s, with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried herself with the careful grace of someone who'd known deep loss and learned to carry it. "Excuse me," she said softly. "Are you Lieutenant Chen?" "Yes, ma'am. I wanted to thank you for what you did during the flood. My granddaughter, Emma Rodriguez, she's alive because of you and your dog. We were just doing our job," Marcus said, uncomfortable with the praise. "No," the woman said firmly. "You did much more than that." She hesitated, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse. "There's something I think you should know about your dog." Marcus frowned. "Ma'am?" She pulled out a photograph, old, faded, the colors washed out by time. It showed a young man in a firefighter's uniform, kneeling beside a German shepherd. The dog looked almost identical to Ranger. Same markings, same intelligent eyes, even the same scars on the muzzle. Marcus's breath caught. "That's my son," the woman said softly. "Daniel Rodriguez. He was a firefighter with Station 12. Died in the line of duty 8 years ago. That was his dog, his partner. His name was Max." The world seemed to tilt. Marcus stared at the photo, his mind racing. "I don't understand." After Daniel died, Max went to live with Daniel's ex-wife. She tried her best, but Max was broken. He wouldn't eat properly, wouldn't sleep, just lay by the door every day, waiting for Daniel to come home. Eventually, she had to surrender him to a shelter, She felt terrible about it, but she couldn't handle watching him waste away. The pieces clicked into place. "That was Ranger," Marcus said quietly. "That was my dog." The woman nodded. "The shelter told us they'd have to euthanize him. They said he was too traumatized, too reactive. No one wanted to adopt a grieving dog with scars and behavioral issues. We tried to find him another home ourselves, but..." Her voice broke. "We failed him. After everything he'd done with Daniel, after all those years of service, we failed him." Marcus looked down at Ranger, at Max. The dog gazed back at him, calm and steady, his dark eyes full of quiet intelligence and something else. Something that looked like peace. "You didn't fail him," Marcus said. "He found his way." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "When I saw the news coverage of the flood, I saw your dog, the scars, the way he moves, the way he thinks. That's Max. I knew it immediately." She paused. "He was trained by one of the best firefighters I ever knew. Daniel taught him everything, not just commands, but how to think, how to read situations, how to trust his instincts. He saved those children because of that training," Marcus said. "He saved them because Daniel's love is still in him," the woman corrected gently. "Because loyalty and duty don't die when we do. They live on in the ones we've touched, the ones we've trained, the ones we've loved." She reached down, scratching Ranger, Max, behind the ears. The dog leaned into her touch, his tail wagging slowly. Something passed between them. Recognition, memory, a connection that transcended years and loss. "Emma is my granddaughter," the woman continued. "Daniel's daughter. He never got to meet her. She was born 3 months after he died. But his dog saved her. His partner. His Max." She looked at Marcus, her expression fierce with gratitude. "That's not coincidence, that's legacy." Marcus's throat was too tight to speak. He thought about the nights Ranger had stared at him with those knowing eyes, the way the dog sometimes seemed to be listening to commands Marcus hadn't given, the uncanny instinct that went beyond training. It wasn't supernatural, it wasn't mystical, it was simply this: love leaves marks. Training leaves echoes. A good firefighter teaches his dog not just to follow orders, but to think, to adapt, to become a true partner. And when that firefighter is gone, the dog carries those lessons forward, applying them to new situations, new handlers, new lives to save. Daniel Rodriguez had trained Max to be brilliant, and 8 years later, in the middle of a catastrophic flood, that training had saved his own daughter's life. "Thank you," Marcus said finally, "for telling me this." The woman smiled, tears streaming down her face. She pulled a card from her purse and handed it to him. "My contact information. I'd love to stay in touch to know how Max Ranger is doing, if that's all right." "Of course," Marcus said. "We'd be honored." She nodded, squeezed his hand once, then walked away to rejoin her family. Marcus watched her go, the photograph still clutched in his other hand. He looked at Ranger. The dog looked back. "Max," Marcus said softly, testing the name. The dog's ears pricked forward. His tail wagged once. "Daniel must have been something special," Marcus continued. "To have trained you this well, to have loved you this much." Ranger, Max, tilted his head, his expression almost understanding. "I'll take care of you," Marcus promised, "for as long as you'll let me. And when your time comes, I'll make sure everyone knows what you did, who you were, how many lives you saved." The dog stepped closer, pressing his warm body against Marcus's legs. His tail wagged steadily now, a metronome of contentment. Around them, the ceremony was breaking up. Families were taking final photos. Officials were shaking hands. The world was moving forward, as it always did, carrying the flood into memory and the rescued into their second chances. But Marcus stood still for a moment longer, his hand resting on Ranger's head, feeling the weight of connection. To this dog, to the firefighter who'd trained him, to the unbroken chain of service that linked them all. This was why they did it, why they ran into burning buildings and dove into floodwaters and climbed into collapsing structures, not for medals or recognition or glory, but for moments like this, for children saved, for families reunited, for the chance to be part of something larger than themselves, a legacy of courage that stretched backward and forward through time, carried by the ones who served without question, without hesitation, without limit. Humans and animals together, partners in the truest sense, saving lives, honoring memory, building a world where every life mattered and no one was left behind. Fire Station 7 returned to normal slowly. The flood damage was repaired, new equipment was ordered. Life moved forward with the relentless momentum that characterizes recovery. but Marcus carried the photograph with him now, tucked carefully in his wallet. He looked at it sometimes, late at night, when the station was quiet and Ranger, Max, slept at his feet. He thought about Daniel Rodriguez, the firefighter who'd trained this dog, who'd loved him, who'd given him purpose and skill, and an unshakable foundation of discipline. And he thought about the people they'd saved together during those terrible flood days. Lily Brennan, pulled from an abduction disguised as rescue. Emma Rodriguez, saved by the dog her father had trained before she was even born. The 11 others dragged from submerged vehicles and collapsed buildings. Lives that continued because a scarred rescue dog had known, somehow, where to look, when to act, what to retrieve. People asked him sometimes how Ranger did it, how the dog always seemed to know, how he could distinguish between routine rescues and situations that required that extra intuition, that deeper instinct. Marcus didn't have a complete answer, but he was starting to understand. It wasn't magic. It wasn't supernatural. It was the accumulation of thousands of hours of training, layered with love, reinforced with trust, and refined through experience. Daniel Rodriguez had built something extraordinary in Max. Not just a rescue dog, but a thinking, adapting, problem-solving partner who could read situations with almost human comprehension. And when Marcus had found him in that shelter, scheduled for euthanasia, Max had been waiting. Not for death, but for a second chance. For another handler who would trust him, work with him, let him do what he'd been born and trained to do, save lives. On a warm evening in late spring, 6 months after the flood, Marcus sat on the station's back steps with a cup of coffee, watching the sun set over Millbrook County. The damaged neighborhoods were rebuilding. The creek was back within its banks. The world had healed as it always did, leaving scars but continuing forward. Ranger lay beside him, his chin resting on Marcus's boot. The dog's eyes were half closed, content. The medal hung from a hook inside the station, polished and displayed, but Marcus knew the real reward wasn't metal and ribbon. It was these quiet moments, the knowledge that they'd made a difference, that they'd pulled light from darkness and hope from disaster. "You miss him, don't you?" Marcus said quietly, looking down at the dog. "Your first partner." Ranger's ears twitched. He looked up at Marcus, his expression almost wistful. "I hope he knows," Marcus continued, "wherever he is. I hope he knows you're still out here, still saving people, still being the hero he trained you to be." Ranger stood, stretched, and nuzzled Marcus's hand. His tail wagged slowly. "Come on, boy, let's do a perimeter check." They walked the fence line together, the evening air cool and sweet. Ranger moved with purpose, his nose to the ground, his body alert. Always searching, always ready, because that's what rescue dogs do. That's what heroes do. They don't stop. They don't quit. They don't give up, even when the odds are impossible, even when the water is too deep, even when the building is collapsing. They keep searching, keep fighting, keep saving, one life at a time. And sometimes, when everything aligns, training and instinct and love and purpose, they perform miracles. They swim back toward danger when everyone else swims toward safety. They dive beneath black water to retrieve the one piece of evidence that will save a child. They crawl into collapsing buildings to reach the scared little girl in the corner. Not because they're commanded to, not because they'll be rewarded for it, but because it's woven into the fabric of who they are. Because duty and loyalty and love aren't just concepts. They're living forces that drive action, that inspire courage, that transform ordinary beings into extraordinary saviors. Daniel Rodriguez had understood this. He'd seen it in a young German shepherd with intelligent eyes and an eager spirit. He'd cultivated it through patience and discipline and unwavering trust. And when he died, that understanding didn't die with him. It lived on in Max, in every rescue, in every life saved, in the instinct that went beyond training to become something closer to wisdom. Marcus stood at the fence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Ranger sat beside him, alert, watchful, ready for the next call, the next crisis, the next chance to prove that in a world of chaos and flood and collapse there is still good, there is still hope, there is still a rescue dog who swims back toward the wreckage when everyone else swims away. And in that simple, beautiful, impossible act, there is everything that matters, everything that defines heroism, everything that makes us believe, even in our darkest moments, that we are not alone, that someone is searching for us. That someone refuses to leave us behind. Sometimes that someone wears a helmet and carries a radio. Sometimes he has 4 legs and a scarred muzzle and eyes that have seen too much loss but still shine with purpose. But always, always, he has a heart that knows no boundaries, no limits, no end. A heart that beats with one simple, eternal truth: I will find you. I will save you. I will never give up. Because that's what love does. That's what loyalty demands. That's what heroism means. Not grand gestures or dramatic speeches, just quiet, relentless, unwavering commitment to the sacred work of saving lives. One dive at a time, one rescue at a time, one heartbeat at a time, until the flood recedes, until the building stands, until the lost are found and the broken are made whole, and the rescue dog, scarred, steady, eternal, rests his head on his partner's knee, eyes soft with understanding, tail wagging gently, ready for whatever comes next, because there will always be a next. There will always be someone who needs saving. There will always be water to swim through, darkness to navigate, impossible odds to overcome. And there will always be a dog named Ranger, carrying the legacy of a firefighter named Daniel, performing rescues that seem impossible but are really the natural result of love, training, and trust compounded over time, who swims back toward the car, who pulls out the impossible, who leaves us speechless with his courage, his instinct, his unbreakable spirit. And in those moments, those beautiful, terrible, miraculous moments, we understand something fundamental about the bond between humans and the animals who serve beside them. It's not ownership, it's not dominance, it's not even just partnership. It's family, it's legacy. It's the passing of wisdom and purpose from one generation to the next, transcending individual lives to become something immortal. Daniel Rodriguez died 8 years ago, but his work continues. His training echoes, his love persists. In every rescue, Ranger performs. In every life, Max saves. In every moment, this extraordinary dog chooses duty over safety, courage over fear, service over self. That's the real story, the one worth telling, the one that matters. Not because it's dramatic, not because it's viral, but because it's true. And truth, in the end, is the only thing that endures when the waters finally recede and the world begins again. Truth and love, and the unbreakable bond between a firefighter and his dog, between Marcus and Ranger, between Daniel and Max, between all of us and the heroes, human and animal, who risk everything to save us when we need it most. That bond is what pulled those children from the flood. That bond is what retrieved the evidence. That bond is what swam back to the car. And that bond, that beautiful, sacred, eternal bond, is what will continue to save lives long after the medal tarnishes and the photograph fades and the memories blur. Because some things don't fade, some things don't tarnish, some things remain bright and clear and true no matter how much time passes. Love, loyalty, legacy, and a rescue dog who knows, with every fiber of his being, that his work isn't finished, that somewhere someone needs him, that somewhere someone is waiting to be saved. And he will find them. He will reach them. He will never ever give up, because that's who he is. That's what he was trained to be. That's what love demands. Hero, partner, savior, ranger, Max, forever.